How many performances I did at Phantom did I do? 12,000? Something like that.
Wow.
It was something incredible, and I never thought I would be able to do that. I found I was expecting my son. Of course, that changed everything. My agent said, Roger Redfern's asked you to come down and audition for Fiddler on the Roof, which I'd done with Scottish Opera. So when my son was 10 weeks old...
10 weeks?
10 weeks old, I packed up a car with buggies and microwave and pram and my mother and father, and we all tottered off with the baby down to Plymouth. I loved singing, it was part of me, you know, and it was as natural as breathing. Now I've been in the show at this point for 26 years and the tears were rolling down my cheeks at the final there, and I just thought, wow, you can still move me.
Hello and welcome to the 5 Minute Call. This is a podcast where we take a deep dive into the stories of the people that make theatre happen. This week we are talking to Ellen Jackson, who has had an incredible over 3 decades in the performing arts, and she has worked on the West End. She has toured all around the UK and internationally. Ellen has worked on productions like Chess, Sound of Music, Fiddler on the Roof, Les Mis, and Phantom of the Opera.
Ellen, we're all about people's stories here and how they came to be in the theatre industry. Yeah. Will you tell us about your story?
Well, as far back as I can remember, I loved to sing. And from apparently the age of 2.5, I was singing at my aunt's wedding, and a wee song. And I knew all the words, and people at the wedding couldn't believe that this child at 2.5 was able to sing this song. And as I say, I loved singing. It was part of me, you know. And it was as natural as breathing. And I think you have to love it if you want to make a career in it. But from then, as I would go to visit my granny, and one of the neighbours liked me to come over and sing for her. I think I was about 5 then. And of course, I would come out with pockets full of sweeties. And my mother wasn't too pleased with that. Teeth, sweeties and pennies, and you know, which I loved. And the area I came from in Scotland, it was in the industrial belt, you know, in the central belt of Scotland. And a lot of the people who lived there had come over from Ireland. I'm actually of Irish descent, even though I was born in Scotland, in Motherwell. As I say, a lot of the people had come over from Ireland, and so there was that singing background. Everybody sang, you know, and I sang in the church choir from a wee girl, and we sang at school as well. When we were, you know, we sang hymns in school, and there was a great focus in music when I think about it, even in primary school. And of course there was the youth clubs. And from there came the choirs. As I say, I was a church goer, and was brought up a Catholic, and and sang in the choirs. And when I was round about 10 or 11, the priest, the local priest, he loved, you know, performing and having wee concerts and things like that. And he set up a concert party of the Sound of Music. And we toured around Scotland. I was Brigitte in that, Brigitte. So that was great fun. And I remember going to secondary school, and it was when I was there that a teacher heard me sing in the class, and he asked me if I would join his choir. So that was the beginning of that, and of that period. And he entered me for lots of musical festivals. Which I won mainly. You know, I won mainly the wee music festivals. And I did them in Glasgow and Blackpool. I won a Kathleen Ferrier Rose Bowl in Blackpool. I was about 15, I think. But I still hadn't really thought of a career in singing.
I was just going to ask you that. Yeah. Was it still just... You were just enjoying yourself? I was enjoying, but I had singing lessons from an early age.
Okay. Right. I did have singing lessons from about the age of 13. I think I was 13, I'd travel every Saturday to my singing teacher, and I was singing things like Voi che sapete at that age. I think I had quite a mature voice. But she was a wonderful teacher. She didn't push me too much, and she herself was a very good singer. And also around about that time, I started taking an interest in people like Deanna Durbin. I loved Deanna Durbin, her films, and you know, I would sing along. But I would get records for the library, and I would sing along with things like Mozart Alleluia, and you know, I just sang along with her. So actually, I think that was before I went to singing lessons, and also then I started to enjoy Joan Sutherland. So these were my sort of go-to people for.
Were you a family musical? Were they listening to these things as well?
No, but my mother and father, not so much my father, but her sister, they all sang. And I had an uncle who was apparently a very good singer. My father was not a good singer either. Yeah, that Irish Catholic church-going background, we just all sang. You know, you go to your grandmother's at night and, you know, they would have a sing-song or whatever, and they were good. I mean, these people were good, and there were a lot of people in the community who were good singers as well, you know. So as I say, it was part of life, but at that point I hadn't really thought of a career in music.
When did that come?
Well, actually, when I left school, I became a civil servant for a year. Okay. And after about a year of that, I thought, don't know. It was very difficult because it was in quite a poverty-stricken area of Glasgow, and I found it quite difficult because I couldn't bear to see the claimants not getting paid or whatever. I took the stories home with me, you know. And round about that time, I started to think, you know, maybe I should try and go into the audition for the Royal Scottish Academy of Music. But I wasn't the most confident of people, you know. It didn't matter how good you said I was. I don't know that I really believed it, you know. I don't know where that came from, but I don't know that I did. Anyway, I auditioned for the Royal Scottish Academy of Music. I was 19 at the time. And at that time I was singing The Merry Widow, the role of the Merry Widow in a festival in Ireland, and I won the Best Female Voice. Maybe that was what triggered it, I don't know. Best Female Voice Award, and I had sung Gianetta and the Gondoliers there the year before. But anyway, went to the Royal Scottish Academy of Music, and the background I came from was working class. My father was a steel worker, and I remember when I went into the academy that first day, everybody seemed larger than life, all these big personalities, and I certainly wasn't a shrinking violet, but I kind of went into my shell a wee bit. And as I was saying to you earlier, it took me 6 months to walk into the buffet just to be part. I know, and it wasn't that people weren't welcoming. This was my perception of reality, as it were, that I wasn't posh enough, didn't speak well enough, my accent wasn't plummy enough. I don't know what I was thinking. I wouldn't be like that now. I would just be like, take me or leave me. You know, I am who I am. Anyway,
it was true. Were you the only person with that kind of background, do you think?
Probably not. I'd made that up in my head, I think. No, I don't think I was the only person at all. But it was very different then to now, because these days, music college, I don't know so much about the academy here in London, but music colleges, they only chose 2 or 3 people in a year, you know. It was quite an intensive course, you know. We had 3 one-to-one singing lessons a week. We did languages, we did movement, piano lessons. I hadn't started playing piano till I auditioned for the academy, because you had to have a second study. Yeah. So I very quickly got up. I can't remember what it was. I think it was Für Elise or something, and I still can't play the piano to this day. which is a pity, I think, as a singer. And if I had it to do, if I was advising a young singer, I would say, learn the piano. I really would. I think it's great because it helps you to learn things.
You're not dependent.
You're not dependent on anyone, no. So anyway, while I was there, eventually I worked in the buffet, and I ended up doing most of the major roles in the operas. I did Susanna in The Marriage of Figaro, and they had wanted me to do the Countess, I think. I can't remember, but my singing teacher felt that at my age it was better to do Susanna. And I did the Spina. He was very careful with my voice, and I did the Spina in Così fan tutte, something in Dido. So I got a lot of experience there, and they were fantastic years. I loved my college years. I was there for 4 years, did the performers course.
And exclusively classical music?
It was exclusively classical, but I was actually, in my spare time, before I went to college, I did sing with a group, and we toured around the clubs. So I was singing ballads with this group. There was 2 men and 3 men, I think it was, and me. And I would sing things like, I'm trying to think what I would sing. I think you would call them legit ballads.
Yeah, sure.
So I did do that as well. Yeah, and when I was at my circumstances at the time, I had got engaged at the age of 18.
Wow.
I was engaged. And so my circumstances at the time dictated sort of that I stayed in Scotland. And when I graduated from college, a lot of the teachers were suggesting, my own teacher as well, were suggesting go to London. But because of my circumstances, I decided to stay in Scotland. Well, I was offered, in those days, to get an equity card, you had to do, I can't remember how many weeks, was it 18 weeks or something like that before you got an equity card? But I was, myself and one other chap from the academy in Glasgow were offered an equity card straight off. So I went into Scottish Opera, and I went into Scottish Opera chorus. It was and when I was, I'm fast forwarding here. When I was 28, 29, I got a chance to. A director I'd worked with in Scottish Opera phoned me up and said, "Would you like to come down to Wales to do a part in the musical Annie?" And I thought, oh, why not? So I packed my bag, I went to Wales and I did Annie. And when I was there, I did a boiling sister, nothing, and Mrs. Pugh, I think was what I did. And while I was there, I met an actress called Jean Reeve, who was quite well known at the time, lovely woman. And Jean was doing, this was in Swansea Grand. And Jean said to me, "Roger Redfern is doing A Sound of Music in Plymouth. Why don't you audition for it?" And I thought, oh, why? Oh, maybe I should. So I picked up the phone and I said, "Could you put me through to Roger Redfern, please?" I didn't know this was not the etiquette. "Hello, Roger. I've been speaking to somebody Jean Reeve, and she thinks I should have an audition." And he went, "Oh, right, okay." Well, he was going, he was kind of laughing when I think about it. And he said, "Well, can you come to London?" And I said, "Yes." When? So I went and auditioned for him in London, and he was so friendly. And he said to me, "Oh, I said, everything's gone." He said, "But no, I'll find something for you." So he offered me a job on the spot. And from there I played Sister Margaretta and 2 tours of the Sound. No, I played Sister Margaretta in the second tour because it had gone in the first tour, but I toured with that, and it was, the first tour was with Jacinta Mokai, who you know, she's done very well, Jacinta. In fact, she was Madame Giry when I was in Phantom. And from there, so I did 2 tours there, and then I realised you need to have an agent for a musical theatre agent. So I got, I got.
I mean, that's great. It's great making your own opportunities. I think it's fantastic.
If I had known, though, I wouldn't have done it. I thought it was a done thing. Yeah. And then I got an agent who was actually a friend of mine, Tano, and he was portfolio management. He had a lot of people in the West End on his books at that time. After the second tour of The Sound of Music, I went back to Scotland and I thought, oh, well, I don't know what I'll do now. I know I should probably do a shorthand typing course. So I went to Motherhood Technical College and I enrolled for a shorthand typing course. And
was that as an something to give you interim work, or,
yes.
or did you think singing was done?
No, it was to give me interim work.
Right.
It was, and I so I enrolled for that, and I got home that night, and there was a message from Tano. Of course, we didn't have mobile phones then. I wonder how he messaged me. I can't remember, but he said, "Can you get down to London for Friday?" I think it was Friday, because they would like to hear you for chess. Somebody's leaving and they want a replacement. So this was after the first 6 months. This was it. And I tried to get an audition for chess. Probably didn't have my agent at that time. I can't remember. So long ago. I'm very old. And so I thought, oh, wow, yeah, I'll go down. So, I mean, the shorthand typing course, I don't even think I did a day. I've ruined the story now, haven't I? I told you. Anyway, I came down. I remember I went the wrong way. It was in Soho in the theatre. What's the name of the theatre? Anyway, it was in the heart of Soho, and I went the wrong way. And I'm like, oh. I had been in London before with Scottish Opera, and I had seen a couple of shows. But anyway, eventually I found my way in, and I got in bang on time for the audition. And I remember I sang opera. I sang Liu's aria from Turandot. And I think I sang the Habanera from Carmen. I got two very contrasting. And then I got the train back home. And when I got back home, my agent phoned me and said, "They want you to start next week." And I was like, next week?
The turnaround of this is you go back up to Scotland, enroll in a course, a couple of days later, come down to London, do the audition, go back up to Scotland, and then you have to start the following week.
Have to start the following week with a suitcase and nowhere to stay. So I had to stay with my agent. So that's why I live in Hendon, because I landed in Hendon, so I stayed with my agent, and I think I started work the following week, the following week. I loved that musical. Yeah. I absolutely loved it. It was quite difficult, Logan, then, because we were dressed, I don't know if you saw the musical, the original. No, you're too young. You're far too young, so are you.
I'm going to take that, yeah.
Are you taking that bit?
I'm taking that, yeah.
But I remember we were dressed in these leotards, as the pawns on the chessboard, and everybody else, because I was just being put in, was in their normal clothes, and I'm standing there in this wee leotard thing, hardly met anybody really, and feel my stomach was out. Oh God, I'm thinking what a sight I am. But anyway, I loved that show. That was, I think, musically, it was one of the best shows I've ever done.
Did you feel a big difference? Because it was a big move going from opera then into a life that was completely musical theatre.
Well, no, because the music, I had done, when I was with Scottish Opera, I had done Fiddler on the Roof.
Right.
And I'd understudied Hoddle. So I'd done that. And the other musicals I did were quite classical, really, weren't they? Sound of Music. At Chess, there were two choirs. There was the rock choir and the classical choir. So and it was, it was great stuff really to sing, and it needed really, I think, the operatic voice. Yeah. And so I did that for a year and a half. Then I found I was expecting my son. And of course that changed everything. Yeah. And in those days, you didn't get maternity leave. They didn't keep your job open for you. That was you were out, and that was life-changing, of course, with my boy. He's 35 now. So...
was that scary?
Yeah, it was. It was scary. Yeah, because we singers, whenever a job finishes, we think we're never going to work again.
Yeah.
And I think that's a common thread.
Yeah,
I think you just think, oh no, that's me. That's the end of it. Yeah. And because there's so many good people around, and especially in those days, there were some fantastic. I remember when I came to Chess, and I stood in the wings I stood in the wings every night to watch things. Even in the opera world, I loved to watch people like Janet Baker and, people like that came to Scotland, Carey, people like that, Kate Cano. They all came, and Charles Craig, fantastic singers. And I used to, as a young singer, stand in the wings and watch them. Because you learned what to do and what not to do as well, you know. So when I came down here and at Chess, I watched the show a few times, but I also watched it from the wings. I used to stand in the wings and watch. It was mainly, you know, the pop choir, the stage school kids. They were absolutely fantastic. And I to see that level of performance was quite new to me here, because these people who were taking part in chess at that time, they didn't come directly from college into the West End. A lot of people these days come directly. They had to pay their dues, as it were, and they toured with, you know, the touring companies around Britain or whatever. You know, people could work in and learn their craft, and eventually when you got to the West End, it was a huge thing. I didn't realise that, but it was a huge thing and they gave 120% every night. It was quite incredible watching them, you know. And Elaine Page, gosh, she was amazing. I thought she was amazing. Her level, you know, every single night was so high. And I learned a lot from that. And I learned the amount of energy you need to perform in these musicals. You know, that was because I had never gone to a musical theatre training college. It was it was classical music I had done, classical singing. So I just watched and learned, and you know.
So you're observing other performers in the wings, and you're watching their aptitude and their skill, and how you go from seeing all of that to taking it and applying it to your own performance.
Well, I just realised that there was a certain level of energy that you had to use, and you couldn't just coast it. Sure. You know, you might not be Florence or the Russian, you know, or whatever, or Svetlana, but these companies were quite small, and also you know you had to pull your weight. And vocally pull your weight. And also you had an audience out there who were paying a lot of money to see you, you know, so you owed it to them. So I would say that's what it taught me as well. Not to overdo it, but to hit that level that you don't really go below. Or if you do, if you're having a wee bit of an off day, you don't go too far below. Do you understand what I mean by that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Did it feel more like a duty then to deliver for the audience?
No.
Was it still just enjoyable?
Well, if I did it, my personality, if I did it half-heartedly, I would get nothing from it. What would be the point in being there? You know, what would be the point? Yeah. So no, I never thought that. I enjoyed it all the more. Yeah. The more you gave, the more you enjoyed it. The more the audience enjoyed it. Yeah. No, that was a real learning curve. I did really enjoy it. Chess. Don't know if I ever knew what the story was about, but I enjoyed being in it. I enjoyed being in it. So then, of course, I had my son, Matthew, and my agent said, Roger Redfern's asked you to come down and audition for, what was it now? I can't remember. Was it a Drowsy Chaperone? Can't remember. But anyway, I remember going and auditioning, and he didn't do it in the end, but he did do Fiddler on the Roof, which I'd done with Scottish Opera. So when my son was 10 weeks old.
10 weeks?
10 weeks old. I packed up a car with buggies and microwave and pram and my mother and father, and we all tottered off with the baby down to Plymouth.
Wow.
Yeah. And my agent was great, Tano, because he said to me, take it as a present. I don't want commission. Take it as a present. Oh. So he is a lovely man. He's a good friend. So I did that for a little while. And then after that, he said to me, we've got you an audition for Les Misérables. And so I came back up. And that would be the January, and I auditioned for Les Misérables. People laugh at me, they go, Les Misérables, because I don't say Les Mis.
I know, you are very, very respectful. Yeah.
Yes.
And of course, at that time, it was in the Palace Theatre. I remember the name of the theatre. At that time, it was in the Palace Theatre, and it was half an hour longer. than it is now. And it was hard work. We had a 5-month-old baby or 6-month-old, whatever he was. It was
How
hard.
did you manage that?
Plus covering and everything. I just did. You just, you just did. And I loved my wee boy, and I would find the best childminders. And I remember there was one. It was an old lady, and I used to drive from Hendon to Southgate because she was so caring with him. So I would take him over there, drop him off, then drive into the West End to a rehearsal for Les Mis, and and I was in that for a year, I think. I stayed in it for a year, but it was very, very hard work. It was nearly back-to-back shows, but I did enjoy it. And after a year, I left Les Misérables, and I'm just giving you a kind of resume of all my... I'm not really...
It's really interesting to see the journey, actually, because you realistically, you've been all around the country doing so many different things.
And abroad, actually. Germany and with I forget these things, you see. We went to Stuttgart, Frankfurt, Venice, at the what was the name of this? Fenice before it burned down, performed there. So, all over, not America, didn't ever go to America. And of course there was another musical I did at the Dominion Theatre, the Beggars Opera. I did that with the opera company. So we were kind of going into musical theatre a wee bit. So then after Les Mis, I said it, Les Mis.
Oh no, I feel like we've broken Ellen.
I'm cool now. After Les Mis, it was John Owen Edwards, the conductor. I was down in Bournemouth on holiday, and John Owen Edwards phoned me up and said, "Ellen, are you free to do a show in Chichester?" Because John had been the conductor of Chess. Mm-hmm. Oh. Wonderful man, wonderful musician, conductor, and lovely guy. And I said, "Yeah, okay." So I didn't audition. He said, well, he gave me the dates for the first night, and that was a great experience. It really was.
What was the show?
The show was a show called Born Again, based on the UNESCO play Rhinoceros. I don't know if the London Marathon, have you ever seen the rhinoceros, the guys running or females running in the rhinoceros costumes? They were our costumes. In that show.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. We were dressed as... Yeah. The music was by Jason Carr, another wonderful young man. And Mandy Patinkin was the star. This is why I want to go and see Mandy. Yes. Well, he's here in concert.
Yeah.
So Mandy, that was in the 80... When was that? That must have been 89, 90 maybe, 1990. And of course, packed up the boy again. And my aunt came down this time to look after him. I didn't make any money from the job. It was one of my favourite jobs, I just loved it. It was fantastic, and to watch. I'm a great watcher. Yeah. And for young students, I would say that's really important for young performers, not about students. Well, students too, but for performers, watch, sit in the wings, take everything in, listen to what the director's saying, to the principals. Yeah, I used to do it when I was in Phantom as well with Hal Prince. When people would go out for a coffee or whatever, I used to sit and listen to his notes to the Phantom or to Christine, because you're learning all the time, and this is what it's about. You don't go to music college and then, I've got a job, that's it. It's progression, isn't it? Anyway, so I did that job at Chichester. Great job. Peter Hall directed it, and there was John, of course, and an old actor called, it was George Clooney's, a relative of George Clooney's. He played Toulouse-Lautrec in the film. Moulin Rouge. Don't know if you've ever heard it. No. So he was a film star. So that was fantastic as well. Could watch him as well. And then after that, what happened? My mother took ill. My mother's got Alzheimer's, and that was a big blow. I'm an only child. That was a big blow, and I was able to come back to Scotland and organise care for her, so that my father. mean, my parents were older when I was born, so my father would be about 78, 79, 80 then, and my mother got Alzheimer's when she was 72. She'd passed away by 77, but we kept her at home and I was able to put things in place. It's funny how life happens, isn't it? You think, oh, I'll never work. There always is that thing, I'll never work again, ever. And sometimes when we have breaks, it's almost like meant to be, for want of a better expression.
Yeah.
It's because I was able then to help my father and out. And while I was up there, I was asked to audition for Nine, the musical Nine. And I came back and I was down to the final two for Saragina, you know. And then I can't remember what happened. David Pountney, who I'd worked with in Scottish Opera, was directing it. I was going to direct it, and then it didn't happen. I can't remember the reason that didn't happen. The Nine, but that was a disappointment because I'd love to have done that role.
How did Phantom come about for you?
Well, the first time I auditioned the same agent, I stayed with the same agent till, in fact, Honor Blackman and I were his last two clients because he gave it up. He used to produce Honor's one-woman shows, and I was his other client. So I was with him. I'm a bit like that. I'm kind of loyal, you know, to people. When I came to London, I went to a contact lens practitioner here in London in Bond Street, and I thought, that's not going to work. It's never worked. But they popped the lenses in my eyes. And hey presto, I'd never seen a conductor before. I was like, it's the truth. I was doing it all by ear. My eyesight was so bad.
Love that so much.
Yeah. Well, it was embarrassing, but I remember when I was doing the show in Marriage of Figaro, and there were two conductors. There was Derek Clark, who became head of Scottish Opera, but there was Derek, he was a student, and Derek was like 20 and black hair and specs, and then there was Dr. Barrett, who was the principal of the college, and he's like 64 or 65, and he's bald with specs. And I come off the stage after one of the performances, I went, Dr. Barrett's beat was really clear tonight. And the guy playing Figaro went, Dr. Barrett? He says it was Derek. Wasn't it Dr. Barrett in the pit? It was Derek. And I went, I said, I'm kidding. I'm only kidding. but so the audience, I was like, oh my goodness, look at all these people.
You're acting on a whole nother level here because you're presumably pretending that you can see,
of course,
as well as performing on top. You're double performing,
yes,
and then having to listen more than anybody else to the music
and getting the name of the conductor, not even knowing who the conductor is. You know, and it wasn't like there were two young men the same age. We're talking about somebody who was old enough to be his grandfather and Derek. So that was that for that, you know. Suddenly then I could see the audience and I had to get used to that. And I stayed with that contact lens practitioner till recently, till about a year ago. So how many years was that? That was about 40 odd years. That seems to be the sort of character I am. Maybe that's why I found it so easy to stay in Phantom for all those years, you know. The first time I was asked to audition, I was in my 30s, you know, late 30s, and I'm in the room at the side of the stage, and I'm thinking, why are all these women much younger than me? And they brought me in to audition for Christine, which was ludicrous because I was far too old. They'd made a mistake. So obviously I didn't get the job. And the next time I went in, it was for Covagiri. Yeah. And I got the job that time. And that was when as I said to you earlier, my son was 3.5.
Right.
3.5, and he's 35 now.
Yeah.
See, you know, I mean, his dad would look after him in the evening, which was fortunate, but I wanted to be there for him as well. So Phantom was a fantastic job for that. It was a long-running show. It suited my voice because it was classical, really. And I thought I'd only be there a year. And but I loved it. Such a great show to be in, you know. It's it really was. And then it was the first contract, I think, was for 6 months, and of course you were watched all the time. because it was in the early days, really. I can't remember how long it was running by then, maybe about 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
But you were always, Jeff Ferris, who was a resident director, he'd be out watching you, and, you know, you couldn't get away with being like...
No. So it's back to the stuff you were learning on chess about just always being there, always giving it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And it always surprised me when people would say they were saving it for other things, you know, not singing out, or I never really got that. It you know.
But you never felt the need to? Your voice went with you?
It did, yeah.
How do you keep it fresh?
Do you mean vocally or?
Well,
both, really.
All parts. Yeah. How do you keep yourself?
You can do it, you know.
Interested?
You can. People will say, "Oh God, you must get bored." You get bored if you want to be bored. If you think I'm going to be bored, you know, this is boring, I'm doing it again, you'll be bored. So, and the funny thing was, when I was a young singer in opera, I remember a friend of mine saying, "I'm going down to do Evita in the West End." She was with opera. She said, "And I'll be doing 8 shows a week." And I said, 8 shows of the same show? I said, no, I couldn't do it. I said, I just couldn't do it. How many performances I did at Phantom did I do? 12,000? Something like that.
Wow.
It was something incredible. And I never thought I would be able to do that. I don't think I'd be able to do a short run. Yeah. But I got my mindset into... It's all in here, isn't it, really? As I say, if I wanted to... I had priorities. I wanted to look after my son. It was a decent wage. I was doing something I loved. I was grateful for it. You know, there were many people would love to have been in my position. And I didn't know it would go on for all those years. I just took it a day at a time, a contract at a time. And I wanted to keep the job. And if I wanted to keep the job, I had to work. I wasn't going to shortchange them. Well, they wouldn't have renewed my contract, as they didn't. I'm not saying that people who didn't get their contracts renewed didn't work. I'm not saying that. There are always many reasons. And in the West End, I think everybody doesn't get their contracts renewed at some point. But so I had just got myself in this mindset that, that I was going to work really hard and make myself indispensable. I don't think anybody's indispensable, by the way, but do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I was making myself say, "Oh, we like what she's doing, we want to keep her." Yeah. And I think I was quite a good company member. That's important as well. You know, that any problems you have, we all have problems in life, let's be honest. Maybe problems is too strong a word, but life's life. It was life, as I said, could be challenging, of course, but I tried not to bring it into the work with me. That's just the sort of person I am.
Do you think that was therapeutic for you to be able to leave that at the door?
Well, I think in those days you didn't talk about. I mean, this interview is not easy for me because I don't really like talking about myself. I don't really. I'd rather listen to your stories, honestly. So was it therapeutic for me? It probably was, because I'm quite a private person, and if I'd probably gone in and telling everybody, "Oh, this and this and this," I might have worried about it. What if they gossip or what? So do you know what I mean? I think I'm quite good at keeping a confidence. If you told me something, I'm not likely to go. I don't do that, you know. So that was how I handled it, and I made it. Life was life and work was work, and we just tried to have fun in the dressing room and things like that, and not clash too much, because there's a lot of different women's personalities, and
I was going to ask you, actually, as quite a thoughtful person, wanting to keep your own counsel, simply the geography of that theatre, you're in very close quarters to everybody.
Oh yeah, and at one point we were all in the whole of the ladies' chorus was in a wee dressing room on the second floor, and there was no space for the swing. In those days, there was only one swing at Phantom. I think there's 2 lady swings now. She didn't even have her own place. She sat at the sink. So we were all shoved in this tiny wee room. I think eventually the 3 boys were in it, but the whole of... So there must have been about 6 of us. Was it 2, 4, 6, 7? Was it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of us in a tiny space. And
So
as
how
I
do you
said,
manage that? How psychologically?
difficult.
Yeah.
Difficult. Try and ignore any. It could be. It could be quite challenging, as you said.
Yeah.
But sometimes it's best to keep your mouth shut and not say too much. Do you know what I mean? Just let it go, because I think as you get older, see, you must remember how old was I when I went in? I was 39, 38, 39, nearly 40. You're a wee bit wiser, I think.
Yeah.
Than, I don't know if I'm talking nonsense here, but probably I could be confrontational. I can't remember, to be honest with you, but I don't think you need to give an opinion on everything, and you don't need to be right about everything. It's that thing. It's just sometimes least said. Just keep the atmosphere pleasant. That's, but yeah, so long ago. I can't. I think I got on well with most people there. And of course there was somebody there who was there longer than me. Philip Griffiths is in the Guinness Book of Records. He was there for. Well, he was right up until the pandemic as well. That's when I left at the pandemic, because they closed it. Cameron McIntosh closed the show, and everybody had to go front of house, backstage. I mean, that was a bit.
How was that?
I just accepted it. I did. I mean, I think some people were quite bitter about it. I wasn't. I must be honest. I wasn't, because I'd been there all those years. I hadn't planned to leave, but I'm a believer in. Well, I have a faith in a higher power, and I feel that sometimes I don't know what's best for me, and if I just go with the flow, if I do my bit as best I can, it doesn't work out the way I had hoped, and I just go with the flow, it usually is for the best. And I was I'm sounding a right preacher here, aren't I?
No, you sound very philosophical.
And I just I felt grateful for all the years that I had been there, to be honest with you. And it was somebody else's turn. Actually, it was and the funny thing was, it was a friend of mine who got the Wardrobe Mistress Confidant. I wasn't doing the Confidant then. So I was really pleased. It was Janet Mooney, who I'd been in Les Mis with, a great girl. And so, it was great that she was able to do it. I'm grateful that I didn't take it too badly. I really didn't. I'm being honest here. I really didn't, And I was fortunate I got another agent. I got an agent because when Tano retired, I didn't have an agent for a lot of the year, because when I was in Phantom for the first 9 years, I had Tano. Then I left for a year and I went to Scotland and did Mrs. Mullen and Carousel. My father had died and I needed a break, so I went to Scotland, did that, and I got a phone call from Phantom asking me to come back. So that's why I stayed for the other 17 years or whatever. I think it was 17. So it's actually 26 years in total, so it was 27. But
It's still pretty amazing, Alan.
I know. And you probably don't believe me that I didn't allow myself to get... I must have got bored sometimes, but I don't really remember being... Because, do you know, it's funny. You can find something different every night. What I used to do is I would really, really make an effort not to preempt what they were going to say, not to react before the dialogue was spoken or whatever. And I... so that my reactions every night would be dependent on what line was coming to me. Do you understand what I mean?
Yeah.
And I can remember once, even near the end, doing something in the wing before I went on and saying to the stage manager, "Oh, I've never done that before. That was different." So I was always kind of trying to make it interesting for me as well.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You know?
I suppose having other members of the cast rotate and change around
Well,
probably
that's
helps
true.
that as well.
And a different audience every
Yes.
night. And they're paying your wages.
Yeah.
Tickets aren't
Sounds
cheap.
great, doesn't it?
Yeah. And you're doing some. Just keep reminding yourself, I could be doing X, Y, Z. I'm fortunate. I'm in a fortunate position here, and I can look after my wee boy. I'm not leaving him, for months on end to go touring. Well, I didn't tour. I stayed in Phantom, but I'd done the touring bit for years. And
Can I ask how you kept your voice and yourself in good shape? Whilst I'm really interested in the idea that you grew as a person and as a physical being through a contract. That is not what I meant, Ellen. That is not what I meant. How do you keep that side of? How do you look after yourself through the changes in your own physiology as you go through a contract for that long?
Well, you have to take care of yourself. You really do. And of course, people didn't go off as much. They didn't go off. They didn't. So it was hard when Matthew was a baby, because I'd be coming in from Les Mis and then getting in maybe at 11:30 at night, and then up in the middle of the night and feeding him, and then taking him not taking him to school, not at that point, I've jumped a bit. But when he started, I wasn't feeding him when he was 5 in the middle of the night. But
excellent.
So you had to just eat well, make sure you were hydrated. You really have to keep well. That's what I would say. And I had my singing teacher from the academy. I went back to him when I came to London, but he passed away. And how can I say this without being... I was frightened to go to just anybody.
Yeah, of course.
I was terrible, because there's a lot of people teaching singing just now. Yeah. And it's a very specialised singing teacher. So for a wee while I didn't have a singing teacher, but I practised and kept my voice. But your voice never really cools down when you're singing every day,
Yeah.
But
did you have a routine with it? Were you singing during the day before you went in, or just
maybe a few exercises? I didn't do an awful lot during the day. No, I didn't. Which I don't know was the wisest thing, really, in retrospect. I think for anybody in a long, I probably didn't exercise the top of my voice enough. And there's that saying, if you don't use it, you lose it. I probably would say today because I was trying to keep my voice low, because I was in the mezzo line of it. When I was singing the higher lines, it was different. But I would say keep your singing lessons going all the time. All the time. Don't not have singing lessons. Don't say, oh, that's me, I'm in a job now. Yeah. That's the time when you need the lessons to keep your voice healthy. Yeah. And I would work throughout the range. In retrospect, but I was trying to keep it low, because I wasn't an alto, I wasn't a mezzo, I was a soprano, but singing in those low notes, But also I had the voice changes as you age. And there's menopause, which affects it. But also I discovered I had an underactive thyroid. You can maybe hear there's a wee bit, which I take thyroxine for. And I've found now that my range is lower. So I'm choosing songs interesting, more interesting. I'm keeping away from the opera now at the moment, and I'm working with my teacher on. I'm still having lessons.
Fantastic.
And I'm working with my teacher on. Well, we did a little night music the other day. Send in the clowns, and I did this song from Cabaret.
So you've adapted what you're working on to accommodate changes in your voice?
Yes. And I'm hoping that if it's quite hard letting go of the things you used to say. It's quite hard, But I'm enjoying this new phase, these new songs, and I'm still singing some legit stuff as well. But then again, if I want to work, I have to look at what my casting is. And there's not an awful lot for my age now, you know. So I have to learn that pieces that are going to suit the roles that I'm suitable for, really. You know, which is a big change from...
Yeah. I think that what you've mentioned there about, you know, letting go of repertoire and things, I've worked with quite a few singers who've experienced vocal trauma of some kind or another, and readapting to the voice. You know, their voices are completely restored afterwards and we're back to where we were, but sometimes there is a permanent change, and that I know that can feel like a personality shift in a way, and I think that's quite hard to take on board, isn't it? To make peace with.
Yeah, it is. And I'm still trying to make peace with it. yeah, it is, because I still, you know, like to sing Puccini and things like that. But now I'm concentrating more on the character stuff, really, I would say.
Yeah.
Because these are the roles that I'll go up for.
Yeah.
You know,
and do you find enjoyment in those?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Definitely. I'd love to do some character stuff. Yeah. I'd like to do some television as well, actually. And this new agent, I said you've got a new agent, Kerry Scott. He's based in Scotland, so we'll see where it leads. Yeah. So as I say, I still have my singing lessons. But for young singers, I would say, don't think that you're ready, that it's finished when you get a job. It's only the beginning. And keep working.
Ellen, thank you for sharing your story. What do you do at the 5-minute call? Do you have a routine?
I better make something up here.
No. Look, we've had a whole range of things.
Many.
A whole range of things, from just going for a wee to meditating to just...
I didn't do anything like that. I ran in, before the 5-minute call. No, the 5 minutes before the 5-minute call, I would... There was one guy, one wiggy and makeup guy, and when I was doing the confidant, this is a cheeky devil, he would say this was me doing my makeup. Put it all out and just go boom. Cheek. Perfect my makeup was. Because I was so used to the show, I knew it wasn't exactly a glamorous part. So the 5 before the 5, I would just be probably getting ready. That's not so good, is it? I wasn't meditating. I was going, oh my God, is that the time? Oh, do you know what I mean?
Get it down to a fine art.
Yeah, I had it down. And yet when I first joined, I was sitting at half an hour before the half. Yeah. I would be sitting there with all my notes.
So one of the other things that we've started on this podcast is we ask all of our guests to write a question in here for our next guest.
Oh.
So there is and we don't see it. So this is completely sight unseen. I'm going to read this for the very first time, and then you're going to write your own question for the next person. So let's see if I can read the writing, because this was an issue. Okay, interesting. I think we've sort of touched on a lot of this today anyway, but the question is, what show or job has taught you the most, or that you have grown the most in, and what was it about that job that made you grow?
I think it has to be Phantom. Could be Chess, was a standing in the wings watching the stage school kids, the energy levels. But I think as a person and as a performer, it was Phantom. Because I had to, as I say, mature a lot to do all those shows and give it a certain level of performance every night. So that was huge. And watching all those different casts, all those different Phantoms, all those different Carlottas, you know, and working with people like Hal Prince. Wow. Gillian Lynn. Maria. I'd worked with Maria in Scottish Opera. That was very sad when she died. Very, very sad. Maria Bjornsson. And her perfectionism was, you learn so much. I learned so much because the team was fantastic. That original team of Phantom was like match made in heaven, wasn't it? When you think of it. It was perfection, really. So probably I have to say Phantom. But every job I learned something from. You know, every single job. Yeah.
I wanted to ask you, maybe this is a bonus question. I had written it down and then I thought, no, that's too naughty to ask, but now you just mentioned changing casts. Did you have a favourite Phantom?
Oh.
That's cheeky, isn't it?
No, I don't think I did. I don't actually think I did have a favourite Phantom. I wouldn't tell you anyway, would I?
That's fair.
In case they're listening. No.
Did you enjoy seeing it being reinvented?
Oh yeah. You mean
from person to person?
Oh yeah. In fact, it was funny because Scott Davis, who went from swing to playing the Phantom, I think he's played more Phantom performances than anyone else. And I can remember not that long before the pandemic, sitting in the stalls watching him. Now I've been in the show at this point for 26 years, and the tears were rolling down my cheeks at the final layer. And I just thought, wow, you can still move me. But there were many, and a lot, you know, the really good ones brought something of themselves to the role. Peter Carey, and God, there were so many. I didn't see Dave Willits, but I worked with Dave in one of his first shows. That was Annie, when he played Rooster. He had been I can't remember what he did. Was it an engineer or something? And wow! And then suddenly he was Jean Valjean and Phantom. You know, I could spot that talent from. I believe his Phantom was fantastic, but there were so many. And as I say, they all brought something different. It was vulnerability, or anger sometimes, or sexiness, or they all had some. That was a naughty question. Maybe I do have my favourite, but I'm not saying.
Ellen, thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure having you here with us.
I hope it has.
It's been wonderful, genuinely.
Thank you so much for watching our episode today. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe so that you won't miss an episode in the future.
If you currently are or have been affected by any of the topics discussed in this episode, please see the show notes below for some helpful resources.